Well, of course, I think we all just have to sit for a moment, take a breath, and sort of just say what an astonishing achievement this film is. So congratulations to you both. Um, this is a film about making long-lasting, massive art that stands the test of time. What you have to endure, what you have to sacrifice, and I'm sure that sort of is relatable for making a film like this. So I don't want to be like, tell me the whole journey of this film, but like, what was the seed? What was the spark of inspiration 7 or more years ago for you two writing the script?
Well, real quick, I just want to thank everyone for being here. I know that you came in the afternoon, it's now evening, so thank you very much. Our producers are here tonight that made this movie possible. Brian Young, Nick Gordon, Trevor, Carter, the whole team, thank you so much. We couldn't have done it without a lot of support, obviously. Okay. 7 years ago, we wanted to make a film on architecture. We felt it was the only medium that felt analogous with making movies in a way, and we felt there weren't that many seminal movies on architecture. There's Peter Greenaway's Belly of an Architect. There's King Vidor's adaptation of Ayn Rand's Fountainhead. But we essentially realized that, one of the reasons that it's hard to make a movie on architecture is that architecture is inanimate. And so we felt that the best way to do a film on architecture was not just to present architecture, but to represent architecture. And so everything about this film, in terms of its minimalism, in terms of its maximalism, it is representing brutalist ideals.
And when you wanted to make a film about architecture, were you always specifically thinking about like Bauhaus School and Brutalism, or was that specific in your mind about what you wanted to talk about?
Yes, we were both very interested in making a film about Brutalism. The thought behind Brutalism is about honesty and bringing to the surface, building the way it's constructed, with all the nuts and bolts exposed, and that felt like a great metaphor for how we wanted to make this film and how we want to make art as well.
Brady, I know you've said that this is kind of a personal story in terms of like your personal history. Are you comfortable talking about the connection that you have to this specific story?
Yeah, look, we wrote the film as a sort of exorcism. It's sort of an opera, which is about something that we've been through a lot in our lives. Yeah. Now, look, it all sort of started with there was a book that Jean-Louis Cohen wrote, who's a fantastic writer who passed away last year in sort of a freak accident. But he taught architecture at Princeton. He wrote the book Courvoisier, that was the Taschen book. That's like a big tome. And he wrote a book called Architecture in Uniform that was all sort of about how materials that were developed for life during wartime, how they hugely impacted a lot of the mid-century design that we take for granted today. And it was about post-war psychology and how post-war architecture and post-war psychology sort of march in lockstep. And so the film was about all of those things. But of course, once you start writing something, it always becomes very personal, and characters are generally sort of avatars for your own ideas, especially the way that I think about characters. That these are not movies where we're just supposed to live, a day in the life in someone else's shoes, but they really represent something. I think this was the film where we sort of dared to put as much of our own personal relationship into the character's relationship. And you know, a marriage is a marriage. It's not a one-night stand. It requires a lot of work, and it's a dialogue, and there's you know, it's something which is constantly in progress. So we wanted to. This is a character that you know is very much of the mid-century. Louis Kahn had 3 families, so I mean our character has like a wandering eye, and yet like he is his relationship with his wife ultimately is paramount, even if you don't sort of, you know, feel it all the time. And so we were kind of interested in that sort of imperfect romance between these 2 characters, and that the film sort of reveals itself ultimately in the epilogue to be, you know, downright sentimental.
Yeah, and I think also showing a female character who the 2 of them are equals, and she really, there is a lot of love there in, you know, seeing all of his imperfections and forgiving him and forgiving each other for the trauma and all the ghosts that haunts them. Something that I was interested in exploring. Yeah,
and she fights his battle for him. You know, I mean, that we thought that was really interesting. That the character is just so, you know, in one aspect of his life, completely triumphant and stubborn, but in another aspect of his life is, you know, it feels too debased to really, you know, to sort of face the music in the way that she does for him. I mean, it's a very operatic gesture.
One thing that I took away from that relationship between them is like they're so fiercely loyal, like despite the trauma, the separation, the wandering eye, her being sort of like weakened by war. I mean, she's so fierce, and they are both so loyal to each other and very tender too. So it's a really complex relationship. But
well, she also like ages backwards in a way. You know, she's up on her feet by the end of the movie, and then you know, and like life doesn't treat him particularly well. And so you know, I don't know. I mean, the movie's meditating a lot on how malleable and fungible time really is, in my opinion. And architecture is always in dialogue with you know with how the very abstract concept that is time.
No, I think also as artists, often you go through periods, or sometimes you go through periods where you're descending into places where you're completely consumed with your work, and your ego takes over, and nothing seems more important than the project that you're creating, and then having that other person who will pull you out of that, and that dialogue between the 2 of them, something we want to explore.
You've mentioned a couple of times opera, and the film is structured in these 2 parts with an epilogue, which Vox Lux was also structured in a similar way. This has an intermission built in. I mean, were you always structuring it in this way during the writing process?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, the thing is that we were, because the film takes place in the 1950s, we were thinking a lot about, you know, 1950s melodramas, and you know, it was a lot of like, you know, what would Douglas Sirk have done, like if he could have done it. You know, like I think that every time you make a film, the idea is to try to advance the medium just like a little bit further. And you know, if anything, I'm always upset that the films that we make are not even more radical. You know, at some point, I'm gonna go there. But the thing is that it feels that, you know, it's really like you only get a few inches further every decade. And with this, I think that we wanted to use a lot of the artifice and the kind of, you know, the mise en scène of the 1950s. It's like there's a lot of scenes that, especially early in the film, that are kind of, the choreography is a lot like Rope or like one of Hitchcock's VistaVision movies, and the mid-century dialect from Joe Alwyn and Guy, which is really, really difficult to get right, that Joseph Cotton thing. You know, I just think that that it's interesting because it exists in this space where it's it's not neorealism, it's not a docudrama, it is very representational and just sort of the whole thing with every project is trying to get that calibration right of keeping it transcendentally operatic, while also doing our very best to keep people inside of it, so that because and that's where the push and pull of maximalism and minimalism, which exists in brutalist architecture, but also of course in operas.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about the designs themselves, the actual design of the building, and maybe because your production designer Judy Becker did she designed the building.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Judy's amazing. For those of you that don't know, Judy has designed many iconic American movies. She did Brokeback Mountain and Carol for Todd Haynes, and many other great movies. But she really specializes in like 1950s Americana. I don't think there's anyone who does it better.
Yeah.
But it was complicated. It was a really big ask to because she had to create all of these original designs that needed to evoke Breuer, Corbusier, Walter Gropius, and the whole gang, but they still needed to be original designs that made sense in the context of the story and what the movie was about.
Yeah.
Did she also do the furniture?
She did everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
She did absolutely.
Wow. I want that chair, man.
I will tell you something funny about the chair.
Okay.
The chair, the original design was very, very comfortable, but it was quite large, and in the room it looked totally wrong. So the chair, beautiful, totally not functional at all.
Okay.
We had to make the movie version of it
Right.
to scale, which was about 8 inches shorter than it really should be. So your feet, it really just hits you in the wrong place.
Okay. Your feet are just sticking out like little.
Yeah, something like Barbie feet.
But God bless her, because I mean that was the thing that's so fantastic about Judy is that she understood, we're everything is being designed for the movie, and sometimes you can work with people that are brilliant but very literal, and she really understands how to adapt for the lens.
Yeah, that's a unique challenge because it's like, oh, just do a Brutalist or a Bauhaus chair or something, but it has to be for the movies.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I love the library. I mean, the library is spectacular. Did you talk to her about this?
That was Mona's whole idea. It was really funny because we can sort of be like a little bit of a monkey on the back for one another, but Mona had this sort of vision for the library, and I don't know. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I know. I just remember because you had been working on the scene prior to this, or the sequence prior to this, late at night, and I woke up in the morning and then I started writing about this library. I don't know where it came from. I don't. Sometimes you just don't remember where it
Came from a dream.
came from. Yeah, but I was very excited about seeing Judy realize it so beautifully. It was incredibly satisfying to me.
Stunning, yes.
I loved how she realized that and how she used it. I thought it was also because what is so beautiful with to me brutalist architecture is the use of light, which is so cinematic. And I thought, how can we sort of create a similar effect with interior and using wood? So I think that was part of it as well, thinking about this, how can we, you want to protect the books from the light, but at the same time you want to have a beautiful light source to read.
Yeah.
I love the sequence also in Carrera. It's so stark. I couldn't, we know Carrera marble, the countertops, all this stuff, and then to see the way the mountain is being just chopped to pieces.
Grotesque.
Yeah. And the sort of extractive exploitation of the natural world versus creating a huge monument. I mean, I found that juxtaposition really interesting, but Why in the writing did you feel like we had to like leave Pennsylvania and go to Italy and see this?
It had a lot to do with, you know, one of the film's major preoccupations, which is like Guy's character wants to possess that which, you know, cannot be possessed.
Right.
And when you're in that place, you really feel that. Like it's psychotic. Like we're lining like bathrooms and kitchens with this material that, you know, if we continue to harvest it at this rate, those mountains will not exist in 500 years. They're gone. And it's a beautiful place. I mean, it's obviously, I mean, it's incredibly gorgeous, but it's incredibly disturbing as well. But I think it's precisely, you know, that sadist impulse in Guy's character that I think it really turns him on.
Yeah, and then I was sort of researching stories about the marble quarries during the war, and I came across this true story of them actually pushing down these rocks onto.
Oh my God.
And I just thought that was what an image.
Yeah.
What an image, you know. So just another story, you know, of another person.
Well, and
another artist.
Yeah, and every character, you know, whether it's Isaac Boncolet's character or, you know, Salvatore Sansone, who plays the kind of the man in the mountain in Carrera, you know, everyone has a personal history, and so much of the movie is about how they are all sort of processing the trauma of the decade prior.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you know, so much of this is based on like real architectural movements, real events, obviously. But Laszlo Toth is not. You had to invent him because there was no like real person you could make this about, right?
No. This is this is fiction. Mm-hmm. No one survived the camps and went on to America to have a great career. In architecture.
I mean, we investigated.
Yeah.
I mean,
we tried to see it, so if it happened, but it did not.
No, I mean, unfortunately, there were zero examples. Like when we went to Jean-Louis Cohen to advise on the movie, that was really the first question was, you know, is there anyone that got stuck in the quagmire of the war and was able to rebuild a business for themselves anywhere, not just in the U.S., anywhere? Mm-hmm. And the answer was absolutely not. I mean, unfortunately, the only people that made it out were out of the Bauhaus were folks that Walter Gropius was able to post at universities in the Northeast. So the reality is, and this is something that Judy Becker and all of us discussed a lot, was we looked at a lot of the unrealized projects from the Bauhaus and tried to find a way to incorporate a lot of those ideas in a way to celebrate all of these unrealized projects.
Well, I think that this is such a fascinating, you know, exploration and sort of, you know, to realize this project on this scale, not just the film itself, but also the ideas that you're talking about with these architects and this art is so spectacular. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to wrap up, but thank you both for talking.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Thank you so much.